Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get them casts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started today. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, back for another special edition. It's the Matador Mob Mailbag. We let you take the wheel and steer the conversation, or steal it in whatever direction you would like. And we waste no time getting started, Chris. So I'm going to take you back to United Supermarkets Arena, where the Red Raiders got a double overtime win over Arizona State, and had a couple of folks asking about some of what went on defensively on Wednesday night. We had Brian, we had Caden, we had Roberta as well, asking about the Arizona State game and whether or not you felt like that was defensively a one-off. Is it more so credit to Arizona State for just making some difficult shots, or did you see something that maybe concerned you a little bit moving forward? Brian, I think it was, actually said he still got a little PTSD from the UCF game, so that may be clouding his vision. But what did you make defensively of what we saw on a 106-point night with some extra time by the opposition?
Well, when they're missing one of their best defensive pieces, the trade-off is that they were able to put out on the floor a really good offensive group that you had a hard time matching up against. And I think, like UCF, a bunch of guys that can go one-on-one, and a bunch of, when you kind of go ISO with certain guys, it's just like you just have a harder time with that. So I think what we've seen in the last week defensively, if you want to talk about poking holes in it or what causes you problems, multiple active bigs in Tucson was a problem that you had a hard time matching up against, and you also have a hard time with teams that have multiple guys on the floor that can make and take tough shots, and they can break you down off the dribble and spread you out and things like that. And so it's all about matchups at times. And this was a timing. Like, I think that I'll go back to Tucson. I mentioned to you that Jaden Quaintance doesn't play for Arizona State, and I think that ultimately hurt you, didn't help you, which I kind of looked at it wrong as I watched it play out. I'm like, ruh-roh. I go back to Tucson. They also were missing a player named Trey Townsend that did not play in this game. So they're forced to play, Henry Vasir, or I think, and then Toby Awaka together at times. And probably if Trey Townsend plays, if Quaintance plays, maybe it's a bit different, or you guard it differently, or that fits more into what you would be better at, if that makes sense. But that's not the way it played out. So it's just kind of fascinating how those two scenarios looked at it, or you end up sorting through that, and that's just the hand you were dealt and the hand that those teams were dealt, and kind of like you were in Houston. So sometimes when a team is shorthanded, it doesn't always benefit the team at full strength. It can sometimes cause some problems for you, as we've just seen. And as far as, and the other part of the question was, like, because I know somebody said, did it expose you a little bit? I mean, these are the couple of things that I think that you've seen that you're just going to have a difficult time with. And that's the way the NCAA tournament will be, is it's just about a matchup. And sometimes, or a team being really hot, like NC State was last year. Here you are, what were you, the 6 seed or a 5 seed playing a 12 or an 11 or whatever it was, and you're thinking, oh, we'll get this mid-major. They played all these games in a row. But they were just, just hot, and you were not. And it exposed you a bit, but also caused some problems for you on defense and all those things. So anyway, to each his own on kind of what it exposes, but I think you're kind of seeing some of the personnel conflicts that it causes you, the way your team is built.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you all for that question. This one from Trey, sticking with Tech Hoops, says, in the category of finding ways to win, what's been the most impressive style? Rock fight, track meet, And which one do you think could most likely trip us up in March? You think even though there's been versatility, you think there's one maybe they're a little bit more better suited to?
Yeah, I think it's I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Like, I think in some ways, like your win at Kansas State or one of these just kind of ugly games where you're in the low 60s, mid 50s, and you can't make anything, but your defense is coming along with it, and the opposition is not. I mean, because keep in mind, you played Kansas State and Arizona in back-to-back games, and neither one of those teams scored a single point in the last 5 minutes of those contests. That's insanity. As much as a 111-106 double overtime win, one of your dudes goes for 41 is insane. That also is insanity. The prior is the harder one. That's the most impressive one to me. I don't want to, because I mean, you start looking around the country, and if you were to go deep in this tournament, and that's what you would hope for, obviously, but you're going to see some teams. I mean, I think of like an Alabama. I think of like some of these SEC teams that have a lot of offense, and they just send it at you in waves, and they've got size, and it's like, how in the world are we going to get them stopped? Because as good as you are on offense, there's some offenses out there that are like, okay, I'm not sure we can outscore these guys. So that's why I say the defensive aspect of what you need to do or have done is the most impressive. And now you need to put that genie back in the bottle and try to figure that formula out as we go forward here, because you're about to play two teams on the road that they struggle to score in general. They can, but these are teams that they're in grinded out type of games all the time, and you will have to help them score by defensive lapses or fouling and just some dumb plays or turning it over. We did not talk about that on yesterday's show, Cowan, but that's what was so uncharacteristic. And Grant called some timeouts very early in that game versus Arizona State, because I think he knew. And like you're up big, and then you're in a fast break, and you just kind of throw it away trying to hit a home run. Sometimes that happens at home for you because you're trying to placate to the home crowd. You're trying to make too much happen. But it was your turnovers, because at one point, points off of turnovers was, I think, 18-10 in favor of Arizona State. And then you wondered, okay, why are we trailing by 3 or 5? Because we keep making mistakes, and they are good enough to pounce on it.
Yeah.
And so that's got to be cleaned up. You need to clean up the turnovers, but defensively, what you have done now, it's weird to say it after you just gave up 106, but I think some of those have been more impressive to me than outscoring a team, because it's harder to stop people, especially ones that can score, like an Arizona can, or now we're seeing what Kansas State is now being able to do. And you shut them down at times. Need to get some of that back, but that takes the energy and effort and depth, and you don't exactly have all of your pieces playing well together right now.
I like that answer, and I'm with you. I'm always more impressed by a really dominant defensive team. I think it is harder, so I'm glad you describe it that way. And I think part of that is because it takes the team to come up with that kind of effort, as opposed to maybe a hot hand or two or whatever it might look like, say, if you have a big offensive night. Thank you for that question, Trey. This question from Jeff: was last night's victory over Arizona State the second most impressive this season when you consider how many banked-in shots, fadeaways, last-second shots they seem to hit over and over again? Where do you rank it among some others this year?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, I think that they phrase it that way because I think the most impressive one is the game in Houston, and that'll be hard to.
Yeah.
But I think this is a distant second. Like I'll have a hard time thinking that you and maybe you will, but I'm here for it as long as they're wins. We can have that conversation after we see them all play out, and we can rank them then if you can keep figuring out ways to win in dramatic fashion like you have. But you can have a hard time eclipsing these two for when you factor in all the context and all that. But this was just one of those nights where Arizona State just, like, they had no pressure. They were like, screw it, let's go. And then they start having fun, and then they start to get confident. Yeah. And that's what, and then you started to tighten up, and you weren't smiling, and you start to feel it a little bit. It's like, okay, this boa constrictor is starting to squeeze. And I'm, because you had to win these. If you want any chance at a conference championship or anything like that, these are games you have to win. You cannot, there is no other path. And so anyway, that's the way I would phrase that. But yeah, these are two unbelievable wins in any given year. And it just so happens you've done them or you've gotten them within weeks of each other. But I'd like for there to be more. Sign me up for that.
Oh, yeah. I'd be interested, too, in what that ranking looks like, as you talked about kind of later on after you get them all done and you're in a hindsight ranking standpoint, because you think about, a win in Manhattan, Kansas, and what that feels like to a team right now compared to when you got it. And you were just pointing out the way in which you went about getting it. So that one may be moving up the list as well. Thank you, Jeff, for that question. Charles asks, can you win the tournament with only 8 players getting minutes and only 6 playing more than 10? First, today's episode brought to you by WayFair, and there's nothing after the holiday hustle to get you back into a routine like decluttering, refreshing, and giving your space a little TLC. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your place a new look to start the year, WayFair has everything you need all within your budget. And their huge selection makes it easy to find that specific item to fit your style. Plus the free and no-hassle delivery, even for the bigger stuff. WayFair's site is so easy to navigate. You're going to find everything you need in no time. And there's something for every style, every home, no matter the space, no matter the budget. So give your home the refresh it needs with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. WayFair, every style, every home. Charles asks, can you win the tournament with only 8 players getting minutes and only 6 playing more than 10? Are our legs already tired?
Yeah, question. You can, and that's how most teams do it, honestly. This is while we are looking at there's nobody out there that's rolling out 10 dudes that are all just rolling and refreshed and playing at a high level and all that. Everybody's got different layers to their everybody's roster is flawed. Everybody wishes they had a little more of this, a little more of that. I mean, we could sit here and talk about, boy, you wish you had a little more size to you or one more of this or that. But everybody's going through that right now. And I think typically eight guys, I mean, there's some teams out there that are only playing 7. You're at least playing 8. And you just need to, and it's somewhat unrealistic for have everybody on the same page on the same night playing at their peak. That's the beauty of your team right now is that one night it's D5, one night it's JT, one night it's Chance. Oh, some nights it's a couple of them. One night it's Elijah Hawkins. One night it's Federico. And you've kind of, and that's the beauty of what you're trotting out there is that we've seen what a lot of these guys are capable of on any given night. And sometimes that's what it takes. We've seen Kevin Overton do his thing. I mean, he kept you in the A&M game. If not for Kevin Overton, you'd probably get blown out versus the Aggies in Fort Worth, but you only lose by 5 that night because of all his 3-point barrage. I mean, so you just have to remember all the context of all these different pieces. And I think you have plenty of depth. I mean, again, you're flawed. I wish you had a little more girth and size and length and all these different things, or maybe a really quality experienced ninth piece. This was supposed to be Devin Cambridge, but that's not what you have. And other teams are missing this or that as well. So this is just how it's going to be. But you're in a war. And I will tell you, this is exactly why, and I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but I think there's a lot of talk that this conference basketball schedule may go back to 18 games next year. So there is a lot of chatter just because of the physicality, the gauntlet. It's like, okay. And I thought that they were going to always leave it that way because the TV inventory would dictate it. And every school get to host one more quality game and all that stuff. But I think there's a lot of chatter amongst the coaches and the conference office that this may get rewound back to 18 games because of kind of the physical demand and the travel that it's taking. But I don't know what they'll ultimately land on, but it's not going to shock me if we're back to 18 next year.
Okay. Interesting little throw in there in that answer.
How about that? Yeah. How about that?
Thank you for that question. And I know girth, length, and size, always on the wish list for a lot of folks, present company excluded, of course. I don't know, Chris, if there's going to be, always a tightening, or if you call it something like that, because it may have already played out, but it does seem like by the time you get to that tournament setting, you've really got a tight group as far as what and what moments this guy's in this role, this guy's called upon. And that probably, has, maybe been rounded into that form for quite some time prior to the tournament actually starting. If it just is rounding into form, that may be a little too late by the time the tournament shows up. But, maybe what we're seeing, and this kind of feels like more of a glass half full perspective we're describing, but maybe what we're seeing is some of that kind of coming into vision. And I'm glad you mentioned Federico, because we have several interested in him in the audience always. Popular topic among question askers this week. Roberto, Leah, Jeffrey, we had Blake as well asking, what's the deal with Fetty? Doghouse, injury, matchup? You got a feel for what we're seeing here recently with him?
He's not in the doghouse. He's just not playing great right now. He just looks a bit sluggish and a bit step slow with everything. It's like where everything looks so smooth, and he was anticipating, and he's ready to catch some of these passes. He's dealing with a shoulder issue. He's been dealing with it for 6 weeks, and I don't think he would want that as an excuse or anything. But there have been times, and you don't have to go too far back, and he's catching lobs, and it looks great, and he's kind of being this complimentary piece. But in the last couple of games, which is why these questions are coming, he's been a non-factor. And in fact, you could make the argument that he's been a bit of a liability, and you haven't been able to play him for as much as you would want.
A little bit of a posterization the other night too, probably standing out to some folks.
That
felt bad for our guy. Great play by the other guy, all you can say.
Well, and like he's not being strong with the ball. I think he's not like he should be looking for some of the passes that he's getting or being thrown to, and it's like, oh yeah, and it's just too late. It just seems like it's just like his body and his brain aren't necessarily connected right now. It's just it's a bit too slow or whatever, and it's just kind of a weird deal. But he's just got to turn the volume up a little bit, and there needs to be more of a sense of urgency. And whether it's just this is matchup based, whether he's been dealing with some sickness or something that I'm unaware of or anything like that. But I think that people had seen some glimpses of him being really good and being a great compliment and all that. But then against Arizona and against Arizona State, it just wasn't there. And I think he just hasn't done much statistically or otherwise. And it was hard for him to play more minutes against Arizona State. The minutes that he did play weren't great, but it's hard for them when they went small, because it's like, okay, he can't guard one of these guys. I mean, when they were going small, it's like, okay, this isn't. And I said that on the broadcast. I'm like, Fede's not going to play many minutes tonight because I mean, you just pull him away from the basket and break him down or whatever, and it's not a fair fight on the defensive end unless you're willing to play zone or something like that, and that's not. You're never going to see Grant really do that. So I hope that we get him back and quickly. It would be a nice shot in the arm if you get some juice out of him. And I think
we'll see it again.
I agree, totally.
I'm sure it's just a kind of a roller coaster. Everybody's trying to fight. And
Kevin Overton is dealing with the same thing right now. Kevin Overton in the last 2 games has not been much of a factor whatsoever. And if not for Kerwin's 13-0 run at the beginning of the second half, he would have been in that category too, because those 3 really, we documented that they just weren't much of a part of it in Tucson. And that's kind of what got you, is like you need a little more help, a little more shot making or rebounding or something. And so, Kevin Overton and Federico kind of in the same boat here a little bit. And Kevin got taken out a couple times against Arizona State for some defensive lapses. And this is what Grant has learned from that UCF game. Like, I'm not going to let you play through it. You're coming out. And it goes for JT. It goes for D5. It doesn't matter who you are coming out. And I may put you right back in, but you're coming out. There's some consequences there. Whereas I think before, he's a little more lenient, going to let you play through it a little bit. But that's what he learned on New Year's Eve. And then we've seen it really. It doesn't matter who it is. It's been everybody. And if you screw it up or you kind of make a mess up on the defensive end or don't get back or whatever, out you come. And they all know it.
The clairvoyant Chris Level just running through some answers there to questions I hadn't even asked yet, but they were on the list. You're incredible, Chris.
Okay.
I mean, really, Ed was asking about role players. Which ones do we got to have step up? I think you're naming them right there. Michael is asking about, I'm sorry, Blaine asking about how do we get more consistent bench production? We're talking about it right here. Michael asking about Kerwin Walton. You know, how does he go from All-American to mostly quiet in just a span of a few minutes? And this is all of what we're discussing right here, trying to iron out some more consistency. I think among some of those, and it's still kind of difficult to call a starter a role player, but we know what the minutes breakdown has been for Walton. Among all those we mentioned, to me, it's still like, dude, Walton, you're at the top of the list for like, all right, let's unhitch the wagon because of what we've seen before, time spent in the program, the vet that he is. So I'd really like to see him be able to make it click, but how you do it, maybe the question we actually just don't have an answer for, and they're all searching for an answer for because it's been tough.
And they're all trying. Everybody else is trying that's competing against you. You're dealing with, because some of these next teams on your schedule, there's still time for them to go on a Kansas State like run to where they just kind of all of a sudden they figure it out, it clicks, the schedule falls right, and that's the way they're all viewing it. You're not far enough along yet. See, like you're going to play Arizona State on the regular season finale. Okay, that's the last night of the regular season, the Saturday right before the Big 12 tournament. I don't know what they'll look like or what the situation will be for them at the time that you see them on that night. You may get a much different version of them. Maybe Quaintance plays. Maybe they've decided to move on from Bobby Hurley. I don't know. But these teams coming up on your schedule are fighting to try to, and that's what's tricky. So you're trying to figure things out. Everybody's trying to figure things out. It's just hard, and that's what makes this league so special. And that's why you don't apologize for, oh, we didn't cover, or we barely won, or man, there's all these flaws. No, man, you won. The end.
Yeah.
And fortunately, you've got enough of these pieces that it's on any given night, if just two or three of them can kind of, rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. And you've done it 10 out of 13 times where you've figured out a way to win. And you'll hear from Kevin Overton and Federico again. There's going to be some more moments from Kerwin Walton. There's also going to be some nights where Chance doesn't have it, Darion doesn't have it, JT doesn't have it. Those and that's so. I like the depth because you have. I said this to you the other day when we were talking about, are you built for March? What the difference between you and a lot of teams are, you not only have guys that can score and that can hit shots, but you have guys that can take and make tough shots, like ones that aren't necessarily scripted, like some of the things that Christian Anderson's doing. And like, how many people would love to have a guy like Christian Anderson coming off the bench? Are you kidding me? I mean, like he's given you all kinds of bench production in a variety of different ways as we've laid out. So
yeah, the Dallas Mavericks would like to have him right now, I think.
Yes,
pick a team. I'm glad you bring up Christian Anderson, and thank you guys for those questions. I know we've been hoops heavy. We're going to get to Red Raider football and a question from Kalen in just a moment regarding the future of a Texas Tech quarterback and what that profile looks like. But since you mentioned Christian Anderson, Grant asking, is Christian Anderson a legit candidate for Big 12 Freshman of the Year? First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And FanDuel's live betting feature electrifies every moment. Whether backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch shot, you're never going to miss your chance to get in on the action. Plus, the app, easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. And make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Since you mentioned Christian Anderson, Grant asking, is Christian Anderson a legit candidate for Big 12 Freshman of the Year? Stiff competition always.
It is. I mean, yeah, this is I may forget somebody, but like VJ, the Edgecombe and Rob Wright at Baylor are, I mean, they've been really good. Jaeger Demon up in BYU. Cowan heck, Jaden Quaintance was somebody that I think has put up a lot of different numbers. It looks a little bit different because it's more defensive and rebounding oriented. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody else, and I'm sure that I am. There's a several freshmen there as I'm racking my brain. Houston, nobody. Kansas, really nobody. And maybe I'm glossing over somebody. Arizona, but Edgecombe would be the one that he's a top 5 pick, and his numbers are just nuts. He's getting into the 20s and 30s on some nights, and he's got the highlights to go with it, like the big. So he would probably be the front runner. If I'm forgetting something, I apologize. I'm tired. I'm not able to pull to pull too much more, but Edgecombe would be the one. So I guess to wrap that up in the conversation, absolutely. And I don't know if everything that Christian Anderson does is appreciated by the box score.
Yeah.
That's what it's not just about points with him. It's about managing his team. It's about and he's not been this big assist guy, but it just the ability to score, the ability to do what the game needs at the right time. The 3 steals versus Arizona State, that's just kind of slipped in there. They were massive, absolutely massive when he got them. And, that doesn't necessarily show up. So anyway, if I forgot somebody in this conversation, don't call me a bonehead, even though I am. Edgecombe would probably get the nod. That would be my guess.
Forget them. They're not our guys. Who cares? All right. Thank you for that question. This question from Kalen, taking us to Joey McGuire's football program, and more so specifically to the offensive side and new offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich. His offense, he's asking about what you think Leftwich will be looking for in a quarterback, maybe some skill players, but specifically that quarterback. Chris, what kind of profile do you think we'll be seeing coming out of the recruiting ranks, or even transfer ranks, I guess, in some years to come in the Leftwich era? Could it be similar to what we're coming from in the Kitley era, or what do you anticipate?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is sometimes that's you find a guy that's like, okay, he's not as much of this as I want, but I really like him. He likes us. He's a baller, whatever. So I don't know if there's this template that you're just going to if they aren't specifically this, then we're not going to take them. So there's some wiggle room here. How I would phrase that, though, is that like Kitley, he doesn't want a running quarterback per se, but you better have some athleticism where you can extend the play. That's just what is a must. And I do think like Kitley, Mac will want to run his quarterback on occasion. That needs to be a component of this offense. It's just part of the college game. And the key thing, though, is that you can't be a statue back there. You've got to have the ability to just keep plays going, go off script a bit, and make plays when there's something that's not there. There's just got to be some level of that. And hopefully Baron Morton / Will Hammond / Mitch Griffiths and all that, whoever's taking snaps for you in meaningful games this year, they don't have to run around as much because you got a bunch of big, giant, wide dudes protecting you and keeping you safe and sound and warm by the fire back there in the pocket, that you don't have to run around and extend it. But we know how the game is played. That's just not how it works. So that's how I would answer that. It's not necessarily dual threat, but it is per se, because they're still going to major in throwing the football and throwing it down the field and semi-balanced attack. But the QB run game / QB being athletic enough to make some plays that aren't there, that's a non-negotiable, I would say.
All right. Thank you for that question, Kalen. Next, this one from a couple of different folks in this similar kind of category. Mike, Joe, Ron, all asking once again about Christian Anderson. Two-parter here, though. Can we keep him a Red Raider first? Second, do we have any shot at getting his younger brother on camp? And what do you know about said younger brother? But to hear that answer, you're actually going to need to join us for the Matador Mob Mailbag Overtime Edition. What do you get the man or woman in your life that's already had 2 overtimes this week? You get them another overtime. So sit tight, Chris. I got another one for you. For those on the outside, this is where we live. Thank you, as always, for being out there throughout the week. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And do become a Matador Mob insider by hitting the show notes, finding a link there to a free 14-day trial. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit the QR code on your screen. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. Chris, appreciate your time throughout the week, man. Enjoyed it as always. Hang on for what I think was the final overtime of the week for you, but we appreciate you all the while.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Appreciate it. We'll talk to everybody next time or in a minute, depending on if you're a mob member or not, I guess.
I hate saying I'm going to get a text from you if there's extra time in Stillwater. I shouldn't have said that out loud. All right, appreciate you all for being out there. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.